Voice of Indonesia.
Well, listeners, now here in our studio we have the ambassador of Syria Arab Republic to Indonesia, His Excellency Abdul Monen Annam. How are you,
Thank
Excellency?
you. Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
It's good
I'm
to
well.
be here.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
And today we are going to discuss about the progress after the post the earthquake, the massive earthquake which shook Turkey and Syria a few months ago, and also we will discuss and talk about the two countries' relationship, Indonesia and Syria. And first, I would like to say congratulations to the government and the people of Syria for their national day, what is called Evacuation Day, which falls on April 17. Congratulations, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind feeling.
And I would like to know why it is called Evacuation Day.
You know, it has to do with the maybe literal translation from Arabic, because in Arabic we call it Yawm al-Jala, and Jala, some translators, they convert it into the word evacuation. Actually, it is Independence Day.
Independence Day, yes. Because it's quite strange to hear evacuation day. Seems that the Syrian people evacuated or something. No,
maybe it has to do with the French troops who evacuated their posts and stations in Syria on that day. It was the last day that there was a French soldier on the Syrian land.
Okay, so the France evacuated, and that's the independence of Syria.
Exactly. They refer to the day when all French troops left our territories and evacuated their posts and military positions.
Okay. Yeah, once again, congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, Your Excellency, we know that a few months ago, Syria and Turkey was shocked by a very massive earthquake, which caused thousands of people passed away. And would like to express, on behalf of the Voice of Indonesia, our condolences to the people and the government of Syria. And how is the recovery process is taking place in Syria at this time?
Thank you for the question, and let me start by extending our highest thanks and appreciation to the friendly people and government of Indonesia for their material support to the victims of the earthquake in Syria and in Turkey. The scenes I have witnessed myself in the days following the earthquake, it means 6, 7, 8 until 20th, maybe the end of February, were quite touching to me when I saw Indonesians, normal Indonesians with low income salaries. They flooded into our embassies, and they were inquiring about bank accounts in order to donate material and financial assistance to the victims of the earthquake. So we are thankful and appreciative, and at this day we feel that really humanity unites people. Indonesia could be far away from Syria, but at the same time it is very close when we saw this kind of material and financial support and emotions, actually real emotions of our brothers in Indonesia. This is one thing. In response to your question, recovery is underway, and with the assistance of countries, mainly Arab and non-Arab countries, including Indonesia, who sent 2 full planes with cargo and humanitarian assistance to Syria on 22nd of February. People started to normalize their lives. The impact is so wide, the destruction is massive. We lost over 12,000 people, around 5,000 houses completely destroyed, maybe 300 to 400 thousand new IDPs. The wounded are over 50,000. The timing of the earthquake was terrible because it happened at 4:17 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
So you could imagine all people were asleep. Nobody is outside doing outdoors activities. Complete families perished, including me myself. I lost 15 of my family, close family. They were killed in that terrible earthquake. So we are facing actually now obstacles of, mainly, for example, heavy machinery. When the next day when the earthquake happened, people were digging with their bare hands to recover their beloved ones, because we don't have lifts, we don't have bulldozers, we don't have these heavy machinery, and still we are having difficulty with the importation of these machinery because of the unilateral coercive measures, we call them. It is the American and European sanctions against Syria. But people were fed, they were accommodated. Even the Syrian government opened schools, all social and public institutions to accommodate the IDPs, the wounded, and some schools were converted into shelters. We opened all our humanitarian, warehouses. The SARC, the Syrian Arab Red Crescent, was working 24 hours. His Excellency President Bashar al-Assad immediately convened a meeting for the cabinet, and he gave instructions that response should be very quick, and it should reach to all areas without any discrimination between areas within the control of the government or outside the control of the government, as long as they are Syrians and they are victims of this terrible earthquake. So we are now coping with the aftermath of the earthquake. We need a lot of assistance. Mainly, if the sanctions could be lifted, then Syria would be able to handle the problem effectively to a large extent. No country can manage earthquake alone without international assistance. But when you have a country which is crippled by 15 years of sanctions, then it will be quite difficult for that country to address the impacts of the earthquake in an effective and holistic manner.
Okay, if we may know, so what are the people of Syria need at this time during this recovery or process?
Now, with the destruction of homes, we need to rebuild the houses that were destroyed. In one town, for example, in north of Syria, as I understood, 2/3 of the buildings were destroyed. In Idlib, in Halab, in Homs, in Hama, in Latakia, in Tartus, in Banyas, all these cities, whether on the coastal area west of Syria, north of Syria, or middle of Syria, thousands of buildings collapsed, and people now are living either in, we call it shelter centers like schools, or tents that have been donated by countries or international organizations like UNHCR and the United Nations. At the same time, you have to calculate also the effects on education. Because if you have around 500,000 IDPs, it means children are not attending schools. So we need to rebuild schools. Hospitals were not immune to earthquake. So many hospitals were destroyed. So we have to rebuild them. And in this case, we hit a hard rock again. They say this is reconstruction of Syria. It is prohibited by Western and American sanctions, and they threaten any country that seeks to assist Syrians to rebuild these destroyed institutions by the sanctions.
So yeah, we hope that the sanction will be lifted soon.
We hope so too.
Okay. Yes. Ambassador Anand, we got informed that you already submitted your credential to President Joko Widodo. And what is your big vision actually as the ambassador of Syrian Republic, Arab Republic to Indonesia?
Thank you. This is a very good question. Actually, before I was promoted to an ambassador, I spent 2 years in Indonesia, ICDA, Chargé d'Affaires. So, though I came at the peak of Corona time, most institutions and places were closed at that time in September 2020. But I was in a process of learning about Indonesia, studying, going back to archives, retrieving some basic documents that goes back to 1950s or 60s, because Syria was the first country to recognize the independence of Indonesia in 1945, and we were from the very first group of countries who opened diplomatic relations with Indonesia. If you look at the Syrian embassy in Jakarta, it is the oldest Syrian embassy in the world. It has been opened in 1952. So I found in the archives so many important documents about the history of our relations, how it developed. I studied these documents. I found that we have a rich culture and basis to build on in order to move ahead. So when I submitted my credentials to His Excellency President Widodo on 20th of March, I was having, let me say, a clear program of activities, of fields that we should work on extensively. The potentials are high and various. I am completely dissatisfied with the level of relations. We have so many cultural proximities and affiliations. Syrians and Indonesians are two friendly countries. If you look at Syria now, you will find hundreds of Indonesian students studying in our universities. So by the time I submitted my credentials, I was having complete vision how to proceed on all levels: political, cultural, economic, on, let me say, on social level, on religious, or let me say, on religious education level. But mainly, I was trying to concentrate on the economic and business level, which is quite important for both Syria number one and Indonesia number two. So, for example, yesterday I was putting my final remarks on what we call it our annual report, in which I have a chapter, containing my recommendations to the Syrian government.
Yes.
Where should we work? The recommendations include all fields, where we did well, where we are still very short of doing what should be done, and my work plan, or let's say roadmap, how to proceed in order to raise the relations to the level that they should be, Before the war on Syria, the size of trade between the two countries was at the level of 150 million USD. I think this is a very modest number. The potentials qualify the two countries to go to 1 billion USD trade exchange between the two countries. And maybe later in the interview today we will come across challenges and opportunities.
Okay. And talking about the trade balance, so what sort of products that Indonesia and Syria could trade in their, trade?
Yes, thank you. Actually, Indonesia is no more an agricultural country.
Yes.
Indonesia, since maybe the 70s, it started to have a clear program of industrialization. And that's why it joined the G20, and it was chairing the G20 last year. So there is so many products that could be exported to Syria on the industrial level. Let me refer basically to the strategic products. Palm oil, for example, it has a wide market in Syria. Let's go to rice. For example, tropical fruits. So many food commodities. If we go to non-food items, we could speak about papers, we could speak about, for example, tires, we could speak about batteries. Now, Indonesia will be an international hub for the production of batteries, especially batteries for electric cars.
Yes.
We could speak about some electrical equipment, electrical devices, electricity spare parts, car spare parts, oil and energy sector is very important. We are working on that level to some extent. And by the way, soon, next month, 16 of May, we will have a senior delegation from Indonesia going to Syria, led by Honorable Mr. Fadli Zon, the chairman of the Interparliamentary Cooperation Committee at the Parliament. He is accompanied by members of all political parties, members of all committees at Parliament, and one of the main objectives of that visit is to explore opportunities of cooperation, chances of trade and business with Syria. So Indonesia can export to Syria so many commodities that I think the list I can start. I just mentioned few, but if you want, I can talk for 2 hours about what we can, what can Indonesia can export to Syria. At the same time, we have from Syria, for example, let me just quote one example: olive oil. Olive oil, Syria was number 3 in the world in the production of olive and olive oil.
Olive oil.
Yes. And olive oil, it has a religious, let me say, significance, because it is mentioned in the Quran.
Corn, yes.
And now, and in Indonesia, you concentrate so much, and this is one of the things I learned about Indonesia, on Sharia economy and halal products. So it has this religious significance, and it could be imported to Indonesia, where you have a wide spectrum of consumers who will take it not only for religious significance, but they will take it as a healthy food commodity on their tables. And if you go to retail shops, you will find that some olive oil imported from other countries sold at very high prices. So we can compete in olive oil, for example. At the same time, we have some other products that we can export, like cotton industries, like vegetables, fruits, tomato, cucumber, so many we have extra product, surplus of production, where we can export it to Indonesia.
What about in defense cooperation, Your Excellency?
In?
Defense. Cooperation.
Actually, we are open on all fields of cooperation with Indonesia. But in the matter of defense, to my information, this has not been, tackled or raised before. And Syria is not a secret that our main supplier of arms is Russia. So most of our arms and training, even mentality is Russian. So we are open on all fields of cooperation. It could be, elaborated further, but it has to be, I would say, looked at and studied carefully by the relevant two ministries of defense in Syria and Indonesia. I am not in a position to estimate how much do we really need the defense. I would say education, not only defense education, but defense equipment and
yes,
production, whatever it is. From Indonesia, this has to be discussed with the competent military officers. And we are open on all kinds of cooperation.
Yes, thank you. And talking about education, you are touching about education now, but in education in defense sector. But this is education, just say as exchange program for students. Is there any opportunity for that for two countries?
Thank you. The question is so good, because this is one of the fields I am working on for the last 2 years. As we have hosted around 300 Indonesian students in Syria now.
300?
Yes.
Okay.
They are studying in the Islamic universities in Damascus. And by the way, they have got full scholarship. They pay only for their air tickets. Their accommodation, food, everything is provided by the Syrian side. So they pay nothing. It is full scholarships. At the same time, we have a few Syrian students who are studying in University of Indonesia, in Samarang, in some universities here in Sharif Hidayatullah. But we have, to be honest, quite few scholarships, around 10, 15, not more. We are aspiring to raise this number to maybe 30 to 50 scholarships per year. And I think exchange of scholarships is very important corridor for the promotion of relations on the educational and high studies field. So we are working on this in consultation with my friend and colleague in Damascus, the Indonesian ambassador in Damascus. His Excellency Mr. Wajid Fawzi. He is also doing his best in order to expand the cooperation on the educational level.
Okay. We hope we'll be have good progress for the discussion with the Ambassador of Indonesia in Damascus. Okay, Your Excellency, now we are in a Ramadan situation, and as you know that Indonesia is a very diverse country, and there are sometimes there are some people misunderstand about Indonesia about people are eating during Ramadan. So how do you find Ramadan in Indonesia?
It is very interesting, and I would say Ramadan actually has its own, very private meaning and significance. But in Indonesia, it has its own flavor, in the sense that you could see the manifestations of Ramadan everywhere. Though this is not classified as a Muslim country, it is a country with a Muslim majority.
Yes.
There are so many non-Muslims, and they have the right to go to restaurants and so on. But Ramadan in Indonesia, me and my family, we quite enjoy it, as we feel we are at home. The Islamic culture and Islamic rituals are quite respected. But since this country slogan is richness in diversity, it means you have so many people who will not fast. But wherever I go, from the shopping malls to the mosques to receptions of embassies I was last week in Solo. We went to Solo. Where there we attended the Sheikh Zayed annual day of humanitarian assistance. It was attended by His Excellency President Widodo. Wherever we go, we see that Ramadan, it has its own really flavor in Indonesia. People are quite emotional about it. And as we go to some public markets, we could see that they are cooking special foods and meals in the streets, like Syria. If you go to Damascus, you find people, for example, selling before iftar certain types of food and liquids like arqsus, for example. In Indonesia, same. And as you know, diversity, it has its well-known meaning. So Ramadan in different Muslim countries, it should have its own also meaning, in the sense that Ramadan with Indonesian flavor, Ramadan with Syrian flavor or manifestation and so on. Finally, these all variety of Ramadan manifestations will combine together to make us like a mosaic of great nation.
Okay. Well, Your Excellency, my producer already showed me, tell me that we have to come to the end of this interview. Thank you very much for your time to be here in our studio.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here and to speak to your, I would say, rich radio, which is, as I understood, it goes back to 1945. It is my pleasure, and I congratulate you on the conclusion of the day of the month of Ramadan and on this long history of delivery for the listeners and audience who are following you. Okay. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Well, listener, that was my very interesting conversation with His Excellency Abdul Monem Adnan, the Ambassador of Syrian Arab Republic to Indonesia. I'm Dalal Pane. See you next time.
Voice of Indonesia. VOR.